to order. This is an old-style council meeting for me in that I don't have an iPad in front of me. I'm hoping it's going to come here. We'll see how good my memory is. Wonders of modern technology, I guess. I'd like to call the meeting to order and recognize that we are doing our work today on the traditional unceded territory of the Hupetchisitt and Sishot First Nation. Councillors, any late items? Councillor McClellan?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like under new business to make a motion regarding the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and et cetera. It's a late thing and maybe we won't want to vote on it, but I'd like to discuss it at least.
Okay, thank you very much. Under new business, an issue of from the DFO, and it's an emergent issue. Council, it's a deadline on this particular one of response, so that's why Councillor McClemon's bringing it forward. City, any other late items, Council? City Clerk, any late items? Okay. So with the one addition under new business then, Council, a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Council, we have minutes from a special meeting held at 4 p.m. and a regular council meeting held at 7 p.m. on June 25th. A motion to adopt those minutes, please.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. The council, this brings us to the public input period. It's an opportunity for public to address council on topics of relevance to City Council. Maximum of 4 speakers for no more than 3 minutes each can be accommodated. Anybody wish to address council? Yes, sir. Keith, I saw you first.
Thank you. So I'm Keith Ambrose. I live at 3147 on 2nd. I just wanted to touch on a subject. I spoke last week and I left abruptly. Then I watched the council meeting later on, a day or so later. And the council has spoken to youth in the past. I've noticed it. And you're very inviting, you're very welcoming to the youth, you're trying to encourage youth, you're trying to encourage people in general to you know, enter politics, and be aware of politics, to be interested. When somebody comes up here to speak, it's not easier for me, but not for some. To have what you said dismissed summarily when you're not even there to speak up, that didn't feel so good. That wouldn't feel good for a youth, didn't feel good for me. Not a problem. So I use my powers of observation. That's how what I brought here to you last time. When I said the word busload, that's just volume. That didn't mean I saw the bus get into town. I wasn't at the top of the hump and saw one go by, nothing like that. But the volume of people are visible to me because of my powers of observation. And I've been trained since this high, to use my powers of observation, keep me safe in the industry, in life, crossing the street. No logging trucks getting me on 3rd Avenue, trust me. Nor you, nor anyone else. So, there are more people that are impacted by low housing or no housing that are coming to Port Alberni. The numbers are visible to anyone, to anybody who just chooses to use their powers of observation, and that's the point I wanted to make on the last visit. And it did anger me to have my what I said dismissed, because I'd been working in that neighborhood just behind the ECOS Center for 3 weeks just prior to this visit to City Council. I'd worked there that day, and part of the reason I was so angry is my friend convinced me that I should help him paint some vinyl, and that went against everything I believe in. I knew it was wrong, and I knew it wouldn't work, but I did it that day, and that's why I was angry. That's what broke it was like the straw that broke the camel's back, when that vinyl failed, when the paint was on the ground, and I quit, and I walked out. Well, that's why I was angry. I wasn't angry at council. I had a broken finger at the time, still do. I was angry for a few different reasons, but I wasn't angry at council for the homelessness problem or anything like that. I'm just pointing it out that look at other cities. They're being overwhelmed. Their finances are being overwhelmed, and we need to be alive to the issue. We have a lot of new faces. They're not coming from the vacated buildings. I know those faces. I know those faces. These are new people. I had the good luck to round the corner in my old car, 3rd and I got out here 2 days later, and I was made happy by the fact that they were dressed as a hooker in a candy cane wrap with a black staff was one of our brand new street people. She's from Cranbrook. That's just one of her outfits that she wears during the day. And it was visible to City Hall. I sort of laughed as I drove up the street. I thought, I'm not the only one. It's broad daylight and she's in traffic. And I was just, I don't know why that made me happy for a moment. It's kind of a sad situation. She's from Cranbrook, according to herself. She's not evicted from one of these local buildings. It's not the bylaw officer creating this problem. It's not enforcing bylaws that's creating this problem. It's new people. So thank you for letting me speak.
Okay, thank you, Keith. We have a second person. Please come forward to the podium.
Hi, my name is John Van Dyke. I understand that my name is being discussed in relation to a contract I had with the city a year ago.
Just let me interrupt you for a sec, John. If you could also give us your address.
3142 McNaughton Avenue.
Thank you.
All right. Anyway, just wanted to let you know I'm in the hall in case you have any questions directly. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Anybody else wish to address council? Yes, sir.
Your Worship, Council. My name is Brian Kong. I'm here to talk for a moment about social media. I understand that you're having a meeting today about that. So we have a page, a local page, it's AV Chatter, we're all familiar with it. We do our best as moderators to keep it as tame as possible. Some people invite their own problems. Not too long ago, I sought legal counsel and was directed to the ombudsperson. After speaking to the ombudsperson and the legal counsel, due to the behavior of a council member, it was decided that it was best to keep that person out of the closed group. We know who we're talking about here, Chris. It's you. And that's why you're not in that group. This was the decision between the ombudsperson, lawyer, and city staff. Don't send any more of the moderators threatening letters. It's not appreciated. You're sending multiple threats, threatening legal action, that they either meet your demands or resign. Come on now. So, I applaud your efforts at the social media constraints, and I hope you guys can work something out.
Okay.
And that's everything. Does anybody have any questions for me?
We'll be discussing it a little bit later. I'm not sure if anybody wishes to ask you questions now, but
Okay.
Brian, thank you very much. Okay. Opportunity for fourth person if there's anybody else wishes to address council. Okay. Yes, sir, even though we know who you are.
Thank you. John Douglas.
And
Port
your
Alberni,
address.
2132 motion.
Thank you.
I just wanted to thank the city staff. We were able to put on an event recently that was formerly called Walk with the Doc and got changed to Step to Wellness, and we had a wonderful event up at the multiplex with great interaction and networking between the different agencies that work and volunteer in our community, and couldn't have done it without the city staff, particularly the Park and Recs department. So I just wanted to give a thank you and add a person to everybody for their help with that. Thank you.
It was a great event. Thank you very much. Council, there are no delegations, but that does bring us to unfinished business. The first piece of unfinished business is a notice of motion that I made. Just to give a little bit of background before making the motion, we have a gap in our current policy. And it's that we have a social media policy that applies to staff, but it doesn't apply to elected officials. So other communities such as Parksville, Trail, Pitt Meadows, Tofino, Nanaimo, New Westminster, Vancouver, there's lots of other communities in BC that have social media policy. And what it does is it sets out expectations for what's expected of elected city officials. I'm proud of the level of civility that we've achieved as a council. And it is really important for each of us to engage with the public in multiple ways, whether it be face-to-face, over the back fence, social media, online, radio, television, by letters. Each of us has our ways of communicating, and each of us has different strengths. But what we're talking about here is the online communication. We must always have the highest level of conduct when we do engage. And I've been approached many times, as I'm sure each of us has, recently, with the primary question of what's acceptable? What really is expected in terms of an elected official's communication online? What are your responsibilities as elected officials? So I believe it's now time for us to fill that gap. And I also believe that as council, we have yet one more decision that we have to make. And it's how are we going to build on this level of civility that we have achieved? How are we going to meet the highest standards of communication? We need to be able to focus not on that sort of distraction, because that should be foregone. We need to be able to focus on what are the really important matters that are facing our city. So having said that, I want to repeat the motion, which is that staff be directed to develop a social media code of conduct for elected officials in the future, as well as persons appointed to represent the city. Is there a seconder for that motion?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion, Council? Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, I don't think we need to get into what it should be here, but as a person that at least 99% doesn't make it on any of the online forums and so on, although I think I'm registered on a couple, I can get along quite well conversing and communicating without it, but others need it. So yeah, we should, but I don't think we should be going on any kind of a hunt on people here. Just make a good rule.
Councillor Sauvé?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to applaud you for bringing up this motion. It's unfortunate that we're living in certain days where we have to have a code of ethic. You think it would be normalized just to be knowing how to act. It's often that we're in a public forum, and unfortunately, any act from any staff or other council members, including the mayor, reflects on the rest of council. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for bringing up this motion, and hopefully we could get this done sooner than later.
Okay, anything else? Any other comments? Councillor Alberni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I completely support your motion. I do want to apologize for what did transpire on Facebook, and I've apologized on there, and I understand that whether we have a code of conduct for social media specifically or not, we are always expected to uphold the highest standards of civility wherever we are and whatever medium we participate in. So that's something that I've made a priority over my 4 years here, or 3.5, is to be available on that medium. I do know as well, though, that at the UBCM there's policy being developed for code of conduct. They're creating kind of a template that communities can use. So there are lots of other examples of communities in BC that already have a code of conduct, but it may be useful to see what the UBCM develop and use that template, at least to keep staff from having to reinvent the wheel. Okay, but I certainly support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Paulson, and then Councillor Minions.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly support the motion. I just I don't support a policy that would create censorship. I think that we still need the freedom of speech in our form. It's more develop around moral and social responsibility, what's morally correct. And it's not the Wild West out there. We still need to talk and be what our parents brought us up to be. And we have to be respectful of who we're talking to on social media or in person. That UBCM stuff is really evolving, I think, essentially out of what's happened in Nanaimo with their city council, and it's become so disruptive. And I would hope that that will also entail and take part of the social media side of things. But I don't believe that a policy should be developed that creates censorship of any kind. But I think morally and socially that you need to be responsible for what you do and what you say. And thank you for the apology and you're standing up and taking responsibility. So anyway, I hope that's the way it evolves and becomes good policy in the future.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Minions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say that I wholeheartedly agree with the social media code of conduct. I think that there have been a lot of points over the last almost 4 years where this could have come forward, though, as a way to support councillors who maybe needed assistance on social media. We've certainly all made mistakes on social media. I know I have. But there have been times when I think leadership, either from the city or from council and mayor, was very much needed on social media. And at those points, no leadership was shown. I personally was attacked on social media for weeks after an initiative came forward that wasn't my initiative. It was someone else's initiative, and it would have been really easy for other people to come on and help in those situations when they knew that they were going on. So I think this could have been brought forward as a supportive motion rather than an opportunity to rather than when a mistake has been made on social media. So I agree with bringing forward a policy, and Councillor Paulson, I very much echo your sentiments. This should not be a way to censor dialogue on social media. And, you know, at the end of the day, we all should be holding ourselves to the highest standard we can, but we're also human, and we may be elected officials, but we all make mistakes. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Okay, anything else, Council? On the motion then, all those in favour? Carried. CAO, we have a report dated July 27th, but I bet you actually meant July the 9th.
Oh, we look at that.
Unless you can time travel.
I can't imagine how that happened. I was on holidays last week, and I wrote this before I went on holidays, so maybe it was June.
Well,
maybe I was just on holidays early.
Maybe. Are you still on holidays?
Yeah.
If not, I will turn this over to you, CAO, in terms of your report.
You can let me know afterwards if I act like I'm on holidays still. So, Mr. Mayor, at a previous meeting of council, council directed, on June 25th, council directed that staff provide a report regarding payments, purposes, and provision of any contracts to John Van Dyke by the City of Port Alberni. Mr. Van Dyke was retained by the city through our Economic Development Department to seek venture capital just in support of several projects that the city's been working on. So in looking at this, you see my report. It outlines that Mr. Van Dyke was retained 2 times during 2017 under 2 separate contracts. One expired, and then a second agreement was entered into. The first agreement was for a total of $20,000. The second agreement was for a total of $10,000, with a further $10,000 possible based on some deliverables. As those deliverables were not met, the second $10,000 was not paid out. In investigating this issue, we found, well, with your comment, 3 mistakes. I made a mistake on the date of this report. 2 other mistakes. We had issued, a question had come up at the audit committee on August 14th about checks issued to Mr. Van Dyke, and a subsequent staff report dated August 15th that was received by council on September 15th stated that Mr. Van Dyke was retained by the city's Economic Development Department for the purposes of community engagement, and that's not correct. I think that likely was caused because the invoices that we received from Mr. Van Dyke referenced being engaged by the city. So I think that might be where we made the error in that report. It was accidental, and I regret that that mistake was made. Just today, in preparing to deliver this report, we discovered that that for the second agreement that called for Mr. Van Dyke to be paid $10,000, we actually paid $10,500 for that. For that agreement, there were 3 permissible invoice amounts: $3,500, $3,500, and $3,000, for a total of $10,000. And we received 3 invoices for $3,500 each, and we paid those 3 invoices. So we paid $500 more than the letter of engagement had stipulated. Mr. Mayor, you got my report. You've got attached to that report the 2 letters of engagement for each of the engagement periods. And I think if council has questions, best that I answer or respond to those.
Okay, council, any questions on the report? The times of reporting back to council on the progress on this are really clear in that in the CAO's report. Councillor Minions?
I'm just curious why the contract was written on May 1st for January 1st to June 30th.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have the answer to that. I'm going to ask Mr. Deacon to comment on that.
It was actually March, not May. I have in my business development budget an amount for contracting. So I started to work on a contract with Mr. Van Dyke for January 1st. We went back and forth with the contract for a period of time. In the interim, council approved $40,000 for contracting services under the economic development budget, and by the time we'd agreed on the terms of the contract, it was March 27th, and I chose to pay it out of the amount that had come forward in the economic development budget rather than business development.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, council? Councillor Washington?
Thank you. Just quick on Mr. Deacon. In your duties as the development director, you're authorized to write those POs, and that's your judgment call completely, right?
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I mean, as the CAO's report references, there are certain amounts that I can enter into as a manager without seeking the CAO's approval. If the amount is in the budget, and if the contractor is identified within our list of approved contractors. So that was done. In this particular instance, I had to seek the approval of the city manager because the contract was, the first contract fee was for $20,000.
And you got help from the Port Authority in the end?
So in the first contract did identify some deliverables within the scope of the contract that did pertain to the Port Authority, and in particular the transshipment hub project. And as we moved forward on that, we agreed, the CAO and myself agreed that it was important to engage the Port Authority in making a contribution to the contract, so that came through the second contract.
Okay, anything else? Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, I appreciate the report. It's very concise. And do you concur that the deliverables were not made and therefore we did the right thing?
So the contract says that the Port Authority is to be the sole decision maker with respect to 4 deliverables that were outlined in the letter that's attached, and it is their view that the deliverables were not met, and so I have supported that place.
So maybe we shouldn't have paid either.
I do. There are individuals that have come to the community as the result of the work of Mr. Van Dyke. I don't believe that we would have seen them in the community without his assistance. And if I might go back, we had issued, for example, we'd issued 2 requests for proposals on the Harbor View lands, city-owned lands. And neither of them had received a response. He believed that he could bring a party to the table with respect to a project. He did put a proposal. They put a proposal forward, but it was conditional on Island Health agreeing that 3 floors within the building would be paid for by them, and they refused to do that. So they've gone back to the drawing table. We're told that another proposal is coming forward. It may not.
Councillor Alberni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the report. I think it was thorough. I think the reason why I brought that motion forward to just to receive some information was because there wasn't any information in the past. So just seeing how many different contracts or different kind of issues were being investigated or worked on by Mr. Van Dyke and yourself. Those are things that I think council would like to know, just on a really informal basis. It's difficult because I know you're responsible with a significant budget and you're able to take on that, and you've done wonderful work. I'd love to be able to see more when it happens. Great.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
Okay, Councillor Sauvé and then Councillor McClellan.
Well, I feel differently than Councillor Alberni. As an elected official, it's not that we know everything in every subject of running a city, but we count on staff, and we count on managers, and we count on directors to perform these duties. For me as an elected official to be micromanaging these directors is not right, and it's counterproductive. So I feel the opposite. I think we should leave it to the CAO and directors when it comes to, we're the one that makes the ultimate decision in getting consultant. That's fine. But I'd rather leave it to the experts as into who they're going to get and how they spend their money and when they make their decisions on honoring the contract or not. So thank you for your work.
Councillor McClellan?
Yeah. Only about 1,000 times in the last few years I said I don't like us hiring too many consultants. I think this is a real good example of probably a time we should discuss it a little bit more. And probably too, if you're going to be hiring consultants, because this council, except for me, voted for it lots of times, get references. And then if something does go south, at least you've done your due diligence.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, we did do our due diligence. We made inquiries of the provincial government and some of the companies that Mr. Van Dyke is involved with.
Okay, anything else, Council? Okay, then, Councillor McClellan, would you like to?
I move we receive the report from the CAO with thanks.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. City Clerk, we have an overview of UBCM meeting requests. Anything else that you need on those requests? Are you just wanting to make sure that Council is aware that we've received them and we do have a deadline to get those in, I think, this week sometime?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think this summarizes all the requests that we have received. So essentially just wanted to bring it all forward to Council, make sure Council agrees. And I think with the number of meetings that are there, we can certainly request all of those. There are a couple that the regional district are working on. So we will make sure we're partner with them on that. And I think other than that, we're probably in fairly good shape. Okay, thank you. Councillor McClellan and then Councillor Paulson.
Yeah, on the, I've asked for a meeting in the Ministry of, I said fisheries, but I know that's agricultural fisheries and a dozen other things.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, one of the main reasons I wanted to talk to them is the provincial position on the marine protected area off our coast and exactly what's going to happen. I've been to one meeting on it and done quite a lot of studying on it. And it seems like I'm told not to worry because all I got to worry about is fear itself. But then at the end of the meeting, I was told that there is a fairly large segment of a group or something who is trying to make it so that nobody gets to use that marine protected area, and we couldn't take commerce through it, and our fishers could get into trouble, although they have stated that the tuna fish would not be affected. And also, the other thing, Mr. Mayor, I know it's all federal, but I think our provincial counterpart or whatever should at least be aware of the Port Alberni concerns. And the report I'm going to make, in my report to make a motion, also deals with stopping fishing. Just blank quick and give us 2 days to answer. It didn't sound like fair. So I think we should be asking for better consultation with the federal government. Okay, thank you. Councillor Paulson?
I would actually like to add my name to the Ministry of Forests, and sitting as an alternate on the Community Forest group, I think it's an opportunity for me to discuss some of the things that come out of those meetings. But if it's too late, it's too late. But I don't mind attending that meeting as well.
Okay, anything else? Councillor Alberni?
Yeah, I would actually like to attend that meeting as well for the Ministry of Forest. But also on the open burning smoke control regulation, I don't know if we can invite others on the Air Quality Council from the ACRD, but I'm sure they would be interested if.
I would think, Councillor Alberni, as soon as we share this with the directors, that there will be on Wednesday there will be a number of them, particularly that will be interested in that one and want their names added to that. I would expect.
Perfect.
Councillor Minions and then Councillor Sobey.
Just clarifying whether we need to add our names to meetings or if we can just attend them. Thank you.
Yeah, probably just attend, but I think that's probably right. Councillor Sobey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It would be nice to know which councillors are going to be attending the meetings for the only purpose that we're both on the, or 3 people or 2 people are all on the same page, and because I know they're very time limited as into their meetings. My question, Mr. Mayor, is relating to the Ministry of Public Safety and Emergency Services regarding the cannabis regulations, and I would ask my fellow friend Councillor McLennan to ensure certain issues are addressed. Number one is my concerns over those licensed dispensaries that we have licensed as a business. if they do not meet the requirements of the provincial level, what happens legally to those licensed dispensaries? And it's a big question at the UBCM in the past. I spoke with the lawyer, and it says we're in an awkward position, and it's something that needs to be addressed. So I just wanted to highlight that question. What would be our position for those who do not qualify under the new provincial and federal legislation, and how do we deal with them?
Just a point of clarification. City Clerk, Council has requested a report of our current bylaws. Well, do you suppose that'll be done before this time, that we will see that report before this?
I can't respond to that, Mr. Mayor. The Director of Development Services has been tasked to look into, updating our bylaws. So I don't have the answer.
Oh, he's there. Okay. Just sorry to put you on the spot, but it would be, if we have that report beforehand, it could be really helpful for the councillors who are attending that meeting.
You'll have to educate me on when the UBCM is.
But the third week in September, or second week in September.
But he could also benefit from the information that's going to be having for the upcoming convention, as into what details he can work with and all that, because I'm sure he's not up to point and to par as into all the regulations in place. There's still many things that are being discussed.
What do you think, Mr. Smith?
I'd be very pleased to learn as much as possible. It would be challenging to have this report prior to that, because you only would have 2 meetings. There's only 2 council meetings prior to UBCM, I believe, right? I will do my best as always, but I wouldn't want to promise something that I couldn't necessarily keep.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, City Clerk, do we need to move to receive this, or can we endorse it?
I will make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of endorsing the report? Thank you. Carried. Then, Council, that brings us to staff reports, and that's the first one is on accounts. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the certification of the Director of Finance dated July 9th, 2018 be received, and checks numbering 141792 to 141849 inclusive, and payments of accounts totaling $12,093.92 be approved.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. City Clerk, we have a public hearing report for bylaw number 4965.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's just the written report of the public hearing that was held.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Alberni, can you, are you prepared to make the motion to receive that?
That the report of the public hearing held June 25, 2018 at 6:15 p.m. regarding zoning bylaw text amendment number T14 definition of family George, bylaw number 4965 be received.
The seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. From the Economic Development Manager, Rural Dividend Grant. Council, we have report on page 42. Welcome, Mr. Deacon.
Mr. Mayor and councillors, I'm actually going to ask you just to adopt the first, what would be the first and second resolution. On Friday afternoon, I had a long conversation with an official from the Rural Dividend Program, and he indicated to me that a project that I thought that would only fit under the project development funding stream is actually eligible under either a single applicant or a partnerships stream. So I'm rethinking the second resolution, or that council support the resident and worker attraction initiative. He also indicated to me that many communities find themselves in the same place that we do, with only one council meeting in July. So they are going to extend the period of time that we can submit resolutions from council in support of the project until the end of August. But the grant application has to be in at the end of July. So really what I'm saying to council is that I'm still on stream with the Forested Ravine Trail Loop, and a request that I get a resolution there. But with respect to the second, I'm going to ask your indulgence in allowing me to investigate further what is a better move for the city under this program, and that to go ahead and submit the application by July 31st, but then come back for a resolution in August.
Okay, because as strange as it seems, we actually do have a fairly significant shortage of workers in a number of parts of our economy. Okay.
Yeah.
Council question. Councillor Paulson, do you want to move to receive this?
Sure. That the report from Economic Development Manager be received.
I'll second that motion, Mr.
All in favor? Carried. And
the Council for the City of Port Alberni support the Forested Ravine Trail Loop application to the project development stream of the Rural Dividend Fund program.
I'll second that motion.
Mr. Deacon, just wanting to absolutely be crystal clear in my mind, are we starting the proposal to start that trail below the Fall Fairgrounds and heading towards the highway and into the log train trail in that direction?
So the trail can go either direction. I mean, the intent is really to allow people to start from either Victoria Key or Harbor Key, and then wind their way up a trail, across the log train trail and down the other one. So I've spoken with Rob Goodrow, and Rob believes that the best path is below the Fall Fairgrounds on the Roger Creek side.
Okay, so along with the additional access is additional access. And there, last summer we had an issue down in there with multiple fires down in Roger Creek. Mm-hmm. One of which could have been extremely serious if it hadn't been for the quick action of our fire department. Do you anticipate with increased access comes increased danger?
I anticipate with increased access comes increased vigilance. And yes, I mean, there's always a possibility that either will happen, but I foresee increased vigilance in the area, and equally so in the Dry Creek Park area.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Minions, and then Councillor Alberni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a great initiative, and I'm excited to see it coming forward. And I agree with you completely, and I think there's been fires in that area already this year, from what I understand. So it's becoming an issue, and I think populating that area will be a great step toward addressing that. Just my only comment is, if we are successful in moving forward with this project, that we need to budget appropriately to maintain it as well. It's one thing to create beautiful trails, but if we let them get overgrown and we don't budget to maintain those trails or create a plan for maintaining them, we're not doing anyone any favors. So I think it's important that we keep that in mind in our budget cycles moving forward as we create new inventory.
Right, thank you, I appreciate that. the decisions about the program will be made in late October, and we think that gives us enough time to design/engineer the trail and have a good understanding of both how much it would cost to develop the links that aren't there now and to maintain it.
Councillor Alberni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I feel like I'm picking on you today. So I think the trail idea is fantastic. It would be amazing to be able to go from one of our ravines to the other. The loop would be great. But I did notice in the report you mentioned the ACRD's Agricultural Committee project, and they had approached the city and the Food Security Climate Disruption Committee as well, which is why I'm bringing it up, about an application that they wanted to put in for that RDF funding. I guess I just want to see what your thoughts are around that application and why we should choose the trail rather than pursue that
Sure.
17 acres.
So
farm application.
my thoughts on that are that I'm in the last 3 weeks, I think maybe 4 now, I have taken 2 different businesses, both that are from out of the community, up to take a look at the 17 acres. They both have projects, and they're very different projects that are permitted uses under the Agricultural Land Reserve. And so that represents 3 in the space of about 4 months, groups that have been looking at it. So I am thinking that it's better to keep that 17 acres in play in case one of these other initiatives does go forward. I certainly can't guarantee it, but I think that if either of them were to go forward, they would represent much higher value for the community. And I guess the other thing that does concern me about the request from the farm team, as relayed to me by the regional district staff, is that they're looking for a site for a farmer's market. And if they could come to us and say, we've brought all of the parties together, we're all unanimous in the site that we want, I think that would be a different thing. But until then, I think for us to go out and find yet another site, I just don't share the optimistic view that all of the parties could be brought together on that.
Thank you, Pat.
Councillor Sobey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, the initial grant application, is it just for the study, the $10,000 study?
It is.
And are you focusing on because I know the trails has cost so much money in the past, are you focusing on the 500,000 or 100,000 grant? Being 100,000, 20% of the contribution from the city, or higher up for the 500?
So the project that I'm proposing for either of those categories will be a completely different project. So in this round, which is the only round this year, I'm just focused on the
study.
The study.
No, that makes sense, because Councillor Minion said it herself, that if we're projecting as a result of that study something bigger, it seriously needs to be budgeted. So thank you.
And one last question for me. Do you anticipate that the trails will be named, signed, mapped? Is that part of the long-term plan for these?
It would be. I mean, we're aware that we need to be doing more of that. We have a multitude of trails, in the community. It's one thing that we're known for, and we're aware that a lot of them are not signed. Some of them are not mapped, and one of the reasons for that is that some of the trails are on private lands. The thing that I like about the loop that we're proposing is both of the ravines are completely within the city's boundaries and control. And the log train trail is a regional linear trail, so we would be not only safe, but it would be a great initiative to be advertising to the community and beyond.
It would certainly allow us to get to all sorts of places in the valley that a little bit more challenging to get to at this point.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. On the motion then, Council, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Director of Development Services. From the Advisory Planning Commission, we have a summary of the report on June 21st. Councillor Sauvé, could you like to move receipt of the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the summary report of June 21st, 2018 meeting of the Advisory Planning Commission be received.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
So then, Mr. Smith, is there anything on your report you'd like to go through?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So this is an application for a temporary use permit at a property at 5405 Argyle Street. And what has occurred there is that we had a business license application for an office on that property that was denied because the waterfront commercial zone does not allow for office development. The original intent of the waterfront commercial zone is that it be primarily for marine-oriented and tourist-oriented activities. Subsequent to that license being denied, the owner came in to discuss it, and we also found out that there was an existing office down there that did not have a business license. So a couple instances here. So the applicant applied for a temporary use permit in order to potentially allow some office uses down there. It was seen as a way for potentially this to come forward where council could consider this, where it's not a permanent change to the zone that would potentially allow both the applicant and the city to evaluate whether office is an appropriate use down there. The Planning Commission did have quite a thorough discussion about this. The applicant unfortunately was not able to attend the Advisory Planning Commission. And one of the bigger discussions that occurred was the issue of parking. In Harbour Quay, there's time-limited parking, which works pretty well for retail and other businesses down there. But in an office use, there would be no long-term parking for the employees. Fair enough, he's not advertising the space that has on-site parking, so anyone who's leasing that would be aware of that. And there are some long-term parking in the general area that they could potentially use. But it was certainly an issue of a fair bit of discussion at the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission did support, and this is the recommendation before you, that council consider issuing a temporary use permit for 2 office spaces. One where the existing office that's there, and one for where some significant renovations were done to one of the units for a potential office space. After the Planning Commission's meeting and recommendation, the applicant just last week sent a letter or an email indicating that he would like council to consider 3 spaces for potential office use. So you have before you the recommendation from the Planning Commission that talked about 2. He's asking for 3. Council's not being asked today to make a decision. We have to give public notice on this, and this will come forward to the August council meeting for you to consider. But I guess one clarification is, would council like to consider the temporary use application for 2 or 3 potential office spaces in this property, and I'd be pleased to answer questions.
Councillor Paulson and Councillor McClement.
Just a couple of questions, actually. That particular building, actually, I worked in that building probably for close to 15 years, I guess, at Harbor Sports, on and off. And in that period of time, previous owner as well, 2 out of 3 of these locations or square footage that we're talking about have been perpetually empty. Like they were not rentable, and it goes back further beyond than just the present owner. And I applaud the present owner for some of the work that they've already done. The building looks totally different than when this old guy worked down there. And I'm just curious, the name Bobby Tour doesn't ring a bell with me. Is he a local, or is he?
He's actually from Richmond.
From Richmond? Okay.
He's a relatively new owner.
Yeah.
They have made
Yeah.
some significant investment in the property. And you're right, there has been times when that building has not been well used or has been vacant. I think that led to the Planning Commission providing support for the potential two units. So that's what they supported council considering.
I support the motion based on that. But.
There wasn't a discussion about a third unit because Mr. Tour wasn't there. He's indicating that the upper level that's currently rented out is unlikely to be rented out to the current tenant, and so he's asking council whether you would essentially consider that as part of the temporary use permit.
Okay, Councillor McClement.
Yeah, I guess the first question I got is, are these office spaces on the second floor or the ground floor?
2 of them are on the ground floor, and this further request is on the second story.
Okay, I mean, I got no problem with going with 3 if there's something we can do there. There's like Councillor Polson said, if that building can be fixed up, it's nothing but a help to the area down there. And anyway, I'll go on and let someone else talk.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Minions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not concerned about the parking. I think people can walk a short distance to long-term parking. And it doesn't matter to me if it's 2 or 3 offices. I think if we're going to make it offices, we might as well support what the business owner wants. And I think a lot of people have needs for smaller offices nowadays anyways, so I think that makes sense. But I am concerned in general about converting this to office space. I know it's temporary, so a 3-year term. But 3 years is quite a long time, and I think that this zoning is in place for a reason, because we want that area to be retail, tourist. We want people to come to the Harbor Quay and have a reason to be there and not walk around and think, oh, well, there's a cute little Mexican shop and a couple things, but then there's a whole bunch of offices. Offices are meant to be in specific areas for a reason, and offices don't draw tourists and don't, so I think that there's, I think I'm supportive of the use right now. We want the person who's investing in the community to have a space that works for them, but I'm wondering if there was any discussion of a shorter term, because 3 years is a reasonably long amount of time.
So council does have the discretion, so you can issue it up to 3 years. Council can choose to issue it for a different length of time. You could consider it for 1 year or 2 year or 2.5 if you really wanted to. So council does have that discretion under the temporary use permit process to, he requested 3 years and the Planning Commission was okay with that. But through, as when it comes forward and there's discussion, whether the public has some comments or the applicant comes, council can issue it for a different period of time if you wish.
Councillor Alberni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I want to say that the commercial use, I think the office space use down there, especially if it's on the second floor, that makes a lot of sense to me. To be able to bring people down to the Harbor Quay permanently, not just on a one-off, but to have people there, in a more stayed kind of way. But I do share the concern of Councillor Minions around the term offered. I think 3 years is a long time. We could, if we were looking at changing how we use that space and how it's zoned, then it might be more appropriate to have that term and have, you know, a year and a half rather than 3 years. And then after that year and a half, council can have a good look at what it wants to do down at the Harbor Key for future.
And certainly when we get to that motion, we could consider that. At this point, we're still just doing the receipt. Councillor Washington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this property, this gentleman owns this property.
Yes.
He wants to do 2 offices on the bottom, 1 on the top. Do we know what kind of offices? Is it a rental thing, or is it we don't know what kind of business is going to be taken?
Well, there's one existing office down there now. There was a previous office application that they had to break their lease, and they've now located at another location. But he's done the tenant improvements to that space. Okay. So that's why he would like the option. Like, I'm certain, as any businessman would, if someone comes forward to rent the space and it's different than an office, he may entertain that. But because he's done the tenant improvements to it, he would like the opportunity to be able to do that. And council isn't, like I said before, council's not making a decision now, except whether you would, because we have to advertise, we'd like to be able to give notice that it's either 2 or 3 units that are being considered. Council doesn't have to make a decision on that, nor on the timeline that you may wish to grant the permit. You can do that when that comes forward to you at the future meeting.
Councillor Sauvé and then Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was part of the Planning Commission that heard this application. I guess the sense it was given to us is to the fact that we've been advertising so many years that we're open for business. We actually have somebody that not only has purchased the establishment, but has spent hard-earned money into beautification within that area. I feel the 3 years is sufficient. It gives us enough time. I'd rather see that than having the space empty. And I understand there's a vision for the Harbor Key area, and I feel 3 years is not much to ask, and I'm willing to accommodate this for this applicant.
Councillor Paulson?
I just want to reiterate my experience on the 2 ground floor areas. Both of those places have been for rent for 30 years, and the only one that's had any consistency is the one on the corner by the Lady Rose, and anything that's gone in there has turned over fairly quickly. They've failed. And for some reason, that building doesn't support retail because people just gravitate to the main part of the quay. And I would rather see a long-term 3-year thing in there than have short-term turnover, so it looks like stuff is failing and turning over. And it's just my own opinion. And like I say, my boss for Harbor Sports actually owned the building, and for the full length of time that I worked down there, that place is for rent, and they were almost giving away the farm to rent it, and they couldn't get buyers. Although the improvements might make a huge difference. Who knows?
Council, I met with Mr. Tour last summer and was impressed with him and impressed with his willingness to invest in Port Alberni. And he actually was himself working on the building as part of the reconstruction, so he's clearly willing to put in a sweat equity. Just one question though, Mr. Smith, does this indicate, the fact that there are 2 offices going in there, does this indicate that there's a shortage of office space in Port Alberni?
I really don't know. There's probably a shortage of quality office space, potentially. Here's an investor, an owner that has put money into an older building to bring it up to a standard where people are potentially looking to rent it. So I'm thinking there's a fair number of vacancies, as we know, but there's a difference between a place that is ready to be rented out or where the building owner or the property owner is willing to invest in their own asset.
Right.
I think that might be it's not that there isn't vacant office space, it's just some of it is not up to a standard that many would want to rent it currently.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Minions.
I'll just comment on that from my experience. 'Cause I've been in business here for 8 years, and I've had an office, a mortgage broker's office, and a dental office above an empty hall, in like all sorts of places that were not at all suitable for my business because there's not suitable office space in this town. So it is an issue that we need to address. I don't think Harbor Key is the right place for it. I can understand the use for it for the short term, but it's definitely an issue that we need to address, that there's not ready to go office spaces, especially for 1 and 2 person businesses. If you're not a large organization, there's not really spaces available for you to rent in this town.
Okay, I know that on Argyle Street there's an office space that's just been completed, but it's probably not as small as you're thinking of. It's probably a little bit bigger than that. Okay, on the motion to receive, all those in favor? And Councillor Paulson, Councillor Sauvé, you've done such a good job of that. Do you want to move the second one about the
We'll
letter?
start the letter. That the letter dated July 4, 2018 from Bobby Tour requesting an additional unit, 120B 5405 Argyle Street, be part of the application for temporary use permit for use as office space be received.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Just note, there's a mistake in the spelling on his name, City Clerk. It's T-O-O-R.
That's what she's got.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just on the copy I've got. Okay, all those in favor? Oops, sorry.
Can I just, so you're just receiving his letter?
Yes.
Are you going to then, is there a second motion coming?
There are 3 more.
Okay. Sorry.
So it could be the,
That's what I'm going to ask.
Are your heart okay? All right. On the motion to receive, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, Councillor Sauvé.
We'll move to the first one, that Council of the City of Port Alberni proceed with a temporary use permit for office use on 5405 Argyle Street for a 3-year term.
second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? Councillor Alberni?
Just reiterating what I said before, I certainly support the temporary use, but it is a temporary modification of our zoning. So I think it would be worth us if the building owner is looking at that use in a permanent way, that we as a city council consider that as well, and we should probably consider it before 3 years. So I would submit that.
That can be dealt separately.
Well, we could. Well, it's the motion that we have is 3-year term. I would rather it be an 18-month term, half that, right? So.
Okay. Councillor Minions?
So, can we do that later?
Councillor Minions?
Staff's preference would be that so we're going to have to give notice. So the preference would be that we give notice that it's being asked for as a 3-year term. When council goes to make the decision, you can alter that if the majority into what you wish. It's more important that we err on the side of the larger than the narrower, and that's why we're asking clarification about whether you want 2 or 3 that you're going to be considering. But you don't have to decide on the year term, but the notice that it could be up to that, unless the majority of council wants to, yeah. So that would be the preference.
Thank you.
You all right? Okay. On the motion then, all those in favor? Carried.
That the City of Port Alberni apply for the following conditions under the temporary use permit. That a maximum of 3 offices, units, are permitted, and that the office use is only permitted for Unit 116, Unit 124, and Unit 120B.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, thank you, Council. From the City Clerk, Best Western Barclay Hotel structural change application. We can see that on page 55, but City Clerk, if you could switch to that so that we could see it, please. Thank you. We have the report dated June 28th, providing information regarding a request for a liquor control and licensing branch for a structural change to the liquor license held by Best Western Barclay. Certainly interesting proposal. Questions, Council?
Pretty straightforward. Looks exciting.
No? Then, Councillor Minions, are you prepared to make that motion?
that council for the City of Port Alberni support the structural change application for Best Western Barclay Hotel operating at 4277 Stamp Avenue and endorse the comments as provided in the report from the City Clerk dated June 28th, 2018.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
No further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. And from the manager of bylaw services, a bylaw notice dispute adjudication registry system. So we have the report requesting council enter into an agreement with the City of Nanaimo for the purpose of joining the bylaw notice dispute adjudication registry system, also known as DARS. Councillor Wash, question. Here he is.
Hello. Hi, Mr. Mayor, councillors. I just wanted to give you a brief summary as to why this agreement is necessary for the bylaw enforcement department. So to give you a brief overview, there is a bylaw notice ticket system in place. I amended that bylaw previously, the offense notice bylaw, for our fine schedules for any enforcement we do under the bylaw notice system. With that, somebody gets issued a ticket. They have 14 days to dispute that ticket under the bylaw notice system. From that process, it would go to a screening officer to review. So it was recently amended that the Director of Development Services, myself, or other bylaw officers will act in that capacity. There's nothing further to that process, but under provincial legislation, if a screening officer upholds a bylaw notice ticket, it's the understanding that an adjudicator would then be contacted if that disputant wishes to further pursue that violation. So this is a proposed agreement with City of Nanaimo. It's an initiative with many municipalities to join together for cost reduction, and so it would just require moving forward with the City Clerk and you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Washington, are you prepared to make that motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the report from the manager of bylaw services dated June 28, 2018 be received, and council for the City of Port Alberni authorized the mayor and clerk to enter an agreement with the City of Nanaimo for the purpose of joining bylaw notice dispute adjudication registry system.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. And council, that brings us to our current status report. Council, any questions on the status report? Councillor Paulson?
May as well hit with number 21, Arrowview Hotel. Where are we at? Every council meeting. Sorry.
We're still continuing to work with trying to get prices and bids from contractors that we would then again bring to council. It is taking longer than I would like or had thought, but that is where we're still at.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then Councillor Paulson, do you want to move receipt of the status report? Please?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Carried, thank you. And council manager's monthly reports, the first one from Development Services. You're getting your exercise today there,
I wasn't
Mr.
paying
Smith.
attention.
Yeah, we're going to get it.
Just, we've got your name on your seat right there.
Yeah. Be pleased to answer any questions. One thing I would like the council know is that the request for proposals for the main construction contract for the wastewater treatment plant has been issued, or is out there on BC Bid, our website, and various other locations. So that is the main part of the construction for our wastewater treatment facility. So that will come forward to a future council meeting once those have been received, reviewed, and a recommendation made to go forward. And I'd be pleased to answer other questions.
Councillor Paulson?
Just, I think you answered this before, but just to, if all things were perfect, what kind of timeline are we looking at moving forward and for completion, roughly?
There'll be more than a year of construction.
Right.
There really will. There really will be. And then there's some certain windows for some parts of the project, like the installation of the outfall into the outlet has specific time frames where that work is going to be allowed to be done. Part of the request for proposals from the main contractor will be part of, okay, what's your construction schedule?
Mr. Smith, I'm looking at the numbers there, and they look very similar to last year, but somehow when you drive around town, it feels busier. So I'm not sure why, but it does. You go in behind Jack's store, and there's, you know, all this amazing development going on in there, for example. And is this quite normal, or?
The last couple of years have been busier than we've had previously. As it is, it's up and down. Also, you know, there's some larger projects that things are going to start to even feel busier. I mean, we've got a couple projects, light industrial projects on Cherry Creek Road that are going to start soon. Rainbow Gardens will start construction soon. So, those ones don't show up on our residential building permit stats, but those are big projects. And so it's going to, in my mind, it's going to seem like it's going to get busier, more so than it's the other way. And there's a couple of the larger subdivisions getting ready. The McBride Street ones, after quite some time, are now registered and legally able to be sold, right? So you'll start to see that ramp up. But as the Uplands Phase 2 gets closer to its completion and registration, you'll see a spike there probably too. The developers of the former high school property are working hard for their first phase of their residential subdivision to get that work going too. So I think you're going to see it seem busier, which I think is a good thing.
I'm betting anybody who lives on Bird Street will be finding it quite busy for a while.
That's the nature of construction.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anything else, Council? Councillor Sobey, do you want to move?
I'll move acceptance of the status report, Mr. Mayor.
Seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And from Engineering and Public Works, Mr. Takama. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for the report.
Yeah, thank you. I understand it's been probably a couple of years since the engineering report has come forward to council. So this will be a good check-in.
Yeah, so long that most of us have forgotten what the last one looked like.
I believe when I look back, it was May of 2016.
We were just kids then. All of us.
Some of us, yeah.
None of us had gray hair.
So yeah, as I put in the report, we've done some good work. Just putting the final touches on North Park Drive actually as we speak. The boulevard restoration. Yeah, sorry about that. Picture was a little dirty. I think everybody was driving on the shoulder when I took that one. The Hilton Avenue storm drainage has been completed. All the line painting is certainly getting better. The center lines, I haven't seen them in town today, but they should be here. Sort of the good news to the bad news, I guess, in the on the second page of talk just briefly on where we're at with 6th Avenue and the Coal Creek Phase 2. Contractor for Coal Creek Phase 2, we've got a pre-construction meeting this week. Would have hoped they would be here by now, but I think that's, again, the nature of contracting on the island currently. Everybody is really busy. And that for 6th Avenue, we're still, with busy contractors comes high prices. We're trying to, undertake the separation, the sanitary and storm separation in that area first and foremost, and as well as the asphalt surface, which is in bad shape, as we all know, on 6th Avenue, and not necessarily in the places where it's optimal for starting construction. So. If any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them.
Sorry for the ignorance, but could you define for me thermoplastic, please?
Thermoplastic is it's a hot product that's put down, and we use that in our crosswalks in high traffic areas. It'll last quite a bit longer than paint, especially with turning vehicles. So say Redford and 10th, we use thermoplastic there. It's do it once and it's there for a few years rather than having to paint every year.
Does it make it any slipperier?
All paint and products that you put down on the asphalt are somewhat slipperier.
So the answer is yes.
Slipperier
than not having it.
Than not having any lines. Well, therein lies the rub. Must have lines.
And the engineering on 6th Avenue from Argyle to Bruce says you're continuing to work with Coors and Associates and design cost. Where are you at with that? Like how far along on that process are you?
I think we're close in terms of we've gone around it a number of times with different options. Again, as the cost estimates have come in, we realized they're above what we've got budgeted. So trying to focus on the most important aspects of those projects, which are the separation. So we need to put a new sanitary sewer line up 6th Avenue. That has to get done before we pave. All of that work has to tie into Coal Creek Phase 2, which of course we got a very late start on due to not getting the grant announcement till I think April.
Yeah.
And all that process. So.
And I notice that there is no comment on Grandview Road, and I know that we didn't put any money into budget for that, but I'm just wondering if you've turned your minds to Grandview Road at all, any plans?
Definitely in the thinking stage, but not drawing any plans or formulating those estimates that we'll get before budget this year.
Okay, thank you. Council, anything else? Councillor Paulson?
I just like to acknowledge one of your staff members that has retired, and Dan Goddard, and I wish him the best in retirement. I know grumpy old guy will find something to do. I'm just a little curious about staffing with Dan moving on. Have you backfilled that position, and how are things looking down there?
So Dan Goddard was our charge hand in the wastewater section, and Carrie Berkey, who also has been on the wastewater section for a long time, has taken that position. So yeah, there is some dominoes that are, and some opportunities that are in place right now. So. Paul Greatson was another retiree that we just had recently as well. And Paul was with the city for more than 25 years as well.
I was actually at his pig roast on Saturday, but he made it clear that he's actually just practicing for retirement at this point, official retirement starting in the fall. Okay, Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, just I was going to thank Councillor Polson had one of my questions. How are we backfilling? Have you hired any more down there to fill back in, or are we just going down in the number of people we have working, or what? We don't seem to hear about hires around here too much.
So a lot of the opportunities we post internally. We have a number of returning seasonals. Some of those seasonals have moved into full-time positions. Haven't gone sort of back to the well in terms of replacing seasonals mid-season. Yeah, we have people off, WCB, that kind of thing, or sickness. Yeah, we always seems like we're down a couple bodies all the time, but we're managing to scrape by.
Okay, and the other question I had is, how are we doing with our kitchen waste? And when is the truck coming, and have we been discussing anything with the regional district?
So the trucks are, I'm told, to be here in August. I think it was supposed to be late July. It's now looking like August. Haven't had much lately in terms of discussions with the regional district.
Yeah, I understood they weren't prepared to do anything at this point, and I just wondered if you had some other plans, but I hear we're going to hear a bit more on that later, so I'll probably ask you again in August.
Yeah, nothing's changed at this point. Yeah. Okay.
And the other question I have isn't on your report, but I was talking to you and Guy C. Khan some time back with Councillor Polson underneath one of the bridges, and you were telling us that the Gertrude Street Bridge by Roger is there's some rotten caps and timbers there. Is that in your thoughts of working on that, or is that going to be left a bit, or how are we on with that?
So we've been doing regular inspections of those bridges, keeping an eye on a number of things. It's kind of like going to the dentist when you've got something happening and you put a watch on it. So we've got definitely watching a couple of things. There's nothing immediately that has to be done right away.
So we do have a bridge caps are okay. They're not going to be not going to cause more money later, I guess is what I'm asking.
According to the structural guys, they're good for now. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
There may be some money available in flooding and earthquake mitigation through the federal government. Sorry, might be worth keeping an eye on that.
For sure.
Brought back some of that information from FCM. And one last thing, with the elevator project here, which we putting in as a result of a grant that we received, what's the schedule for completion on that, as far as you know?
As far as I know, we're waiting for the final commissioning, which also is an inspection. Has to be done before you can flip the switch. So
yeah, we need the glass around it too. So
and the glass has to go around it.
Yeah,
yeah. But it's pretty close. Flooring and a few things as well in the building. So.
It's well, it's amazing to go by that door and have the door open on you as you go by.
The automatic doors too.
Yeah, it can be disconcerting until you get used to it. Okay.
Yeah.
Jack. Still gotta use the stairs for a while.
Yeah. Okay, speaking
grateful I can.
Speaking of Councillor McClellan, could you move receipt of this report, Councillor McClellan, please?
I move we receive the report that we just heard from the engineering department.
Okay, is there a seconder?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Council. And bylaws. Sewer connection and regulation bylaw, amendment number 12. It's an update, I believe, just focusing on current rates. Any questions, Council, on this? Councillor Alberni, are you able to move that motion, please?
That sewer connection and regulation bylaw amendment number 12, sewer rates and septic dump fee, 2018, bylaw number 4967 be now finally adopted, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with corporate seal and numbered 4967.
Is there a seconder?
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McClellan, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I think this time I'd like to have a recorded vote on this one.
Okay. Thank you. It's moved and seconded. Let's start with Councillor Washington. In favor. Councillor Alberni.
In favor.
Councillor Minions.
In favor.
I'm in favor. Councillor Paulson.
In favor.
Councillor Sauvé.
In favor.
Councillor McClellan.
Still opposed, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, the motion is carried. And Waterworks bylaw, amendment number 10, rate changes. The final on this one, Councillor Washington, are you able to make that motion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the Waterworks bylaw amendment number 10, rate changes, bylaw number 4968, now finally be adopted, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the corporate seal, and numbered 4968.
I'll second that motion.
You like a recorded vote?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Washington?
In favor.
Councillor Alberni?
In favor.
Councillor Minions?
In favor.
I'm in favor. Councillor Paulson?
In favor.
Councillor Sauvé?
In favor.
Councillor McClellan?
Still opposed, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, motion's carried. And bylaw offense notice enforcement bylaw number 2016 amendment number 1. And Councillor Sauvé, are you able to make that one?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the bylaw offense notice enforcement bylaw 2016 amendment number bylaw number 4954 be now finally adopted, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the corporate seal and numbered 49654.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McClellan, do you want a recorded vote?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. And the housing agreement, 6123 Russell Place, Rainbow Gardens, bylaw number 4966. Councillor Minions, are you able to make that motion, please?
That housing agreement, 6123 Russell Place, Rainbow Gardens, bylaw number 4966, be now finally adopted, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the corporate seal, and numbered 4966.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And City of Port Alberni nuisance abatement 2018 amendment number 1 bylaw number 4969. Councillor McClellan, are you able to make this motion? Actually, there are two of them.
Report dated July 3, 2018 for the manager of bylaw services be received.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Carried. Carry on.
The City of Port Alberni nuisance abatement 2018 amendment number 1 bylaw number 4969 be now introduced and read the first time.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Carried.
That the City of Port Alberni nuisance abatement 2018, amendment number 1, bylaw number 4969 be read a second time.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor? Carried.
And that the City of Port Alberni nuisance abatement 2018, amendment number 1, bylaw number 4969 be read a third time.
And I'll second that motion.
All in favor? Carried. And council, that then brings us to correspondence for action. The first item is from Kathy Peters. We've heard from Kathy Peters a number of times over the years. We have an email dated June 26th requesting a letter to the Union of British Columbia Municipalities in support of her presentation at the UBCM convention in September aimed at ending child sex trafficking. And Councillor Sauvé, are you able to move receipt of that letter?
Thank you. That the email dated June 26, 2018, requesting a letter of support to the Union of British Columbia Municipalities in support of her presentation at the UBCM convention in September be received.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. And from Jane Morden from the Port Alberni Watershed Forest Alliance. We have an email dated the 1st of July requesting council support the allocation of federal funding from the Nature Fund along with funding from the BC government to a provincial land acquisition fund for the purchase and protection of endangered forest lands in the Port Alberni area. She has a very complete report and proposal there. It's interesting to see that. Councillor McClellan, are you able to make that motion to receive that?
Yeah, I can make a motion to receive it. I'd like to, before we endorse it, I'd like to know a bit more about it.
Okay.
The email dated July the 1st, 2018, requesting council support the allocation of federal funding from the Nature Fund along with funding from the BC government to a provincial land acquisition fund for the purchase and protection of endangered forest land in the Port Alberni area be received.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second that motion.
Let's motion on the receipt and vote on the receipt and then ask the questions as necessary. So all those in favor of receiving that? Carried. Okay, questions, Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, you know, it's a really good idea. It's something I've advocated for a lot of years of, you know, we got to get more forests, and you know, and we're trying right now to get the Community Forest Board is working on trying to purchase forests from private or other areas. Private's the only place that owns it, so you got to buy it off to expand the forest, and that's definitely an assist because we do have a say, and it is being logged in such a way as it's not hurting anything. I guess the slowness for me to just right away endorse it, I'd like to know some of the, you know, what areas they're looking at, and have they talked to any of the people that, like the companies that own this land that they want to buy, are they willing to sell? Are we going to be able to maybe say if someone wanted to, Island Timber, just to name on top of my head, they've got a lot of land around town and are willing to sell some, it would sure help any request to the government if they know they're going to have some success. So I'm just wondering if any of that's happened.
Well, they've certainly had some. Last week, week before last, CAO and I met with Jane Morden, and they certainly have had some preliminary discussions, and they feel that $500 million could be available in terms of public money, plus another $500 million in private money, in order to access some of this land. And in answer to your first question, they're looking at the Cameron Valley Firebreak, Catlin Creek, McLaughlin Ridge, and the China Creek drinking watershed, as well as Horn Mountain above Cathedral Grove. So those are the specific areas locally that they're looking at wanting to purchase and preserve. So I'm not sure if that helps, but that's certainly locally what we're looking at.
My question was any of those places that you mentioned Crown land?
No, they're all private land. Councillor Paulson?
I totally support the intent and everything here. I guess probably the biggest disappointment, I'll echo what Councillor McClellan said, is in the proposal, there's absolutely no mention of the ownership, the present ownership. Like they're talking about, this plan's gonna move forward one way or the other. And if I was not included in this as a partner, whether it be Island Timberlands or Western Forest Products, I would almost take the proposal as being adversarial, and I'm a little concerned that it may actually have a bit of an impression on the current negotiation with our community forest trying to purchase some forest. But I do support, and I'm not going to vote against it, but it's something to consider. There is another partner that hasn't been mentioned in the proposal.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Alberni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was really excited to see this come forward because this was something, even at the very beginning of our term, that I know the Watershed Forest Alliance was talking about, was trying to access some sort of funding to be able to at least approach Island Timberlands or any of the private owners to purchase the lands that they're trying to protect. So I just want to speak strongly in favor of giving them that option, or at least being in support of them pursuing that option. These are going to be valuable lands, and they need significant funds to be able to come to Island Timberlands or any of the other private investors or private landowners to be able to purchase them for protection.
Certainly there, to address Councillor McClemon's concern, the response from the companies previously when they've attempted to approach them on it was essentially show me the money. And now if we can provide some support for this, and I certainly I support it completely, and that's why it's coming forward. If we can provide them the support and they get that money, then they've got something real to talk with. I think it's a good opportunity, and it's an opportunity that hasn't been there before because previously there wasn't any real money available. And there may not be this time, but they at least have something to work with. So, council direction, Councillor Alberni?
I just moved that we endorse the request.
Okay, is there a seconder?
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor? Carried, thank you very much. Council, there are no proclamations, but it brings us to informational correspondence. City Clerk?
Just a few items, Mr. Mayor. A letter from the Corporation of the Township of Spalumcheen expressing their concerns regarding the impact of the employer health tax on local government. Minutes of the Air Quality Council meeting of June 12th. A letter from BC Hydro responding to the city's letter regarding changes to the net metering policy. A letter from Roland Smith regarding the recent disposal of a building at the McLean Mill National Historic Site. And lastly, a letter from Fortis BC providing information on Fortis and BC One Call, the click or call before you dig, promoting safe digging year round.
Okay, Council wish to pull anything out from that? Councillor Paulson?
I just want to make a comment on BC Hydro and their response to our letter, and thanks for sending the letter and asking, but I had no idea that the net metering was being abused the way it was in their response to us, and I now understand why they've had to pull it back a bit and review it, so it's amazing.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Council? Councillor Minions, are you able to move receipt of that?
Move receipt of the informational correspondence numbered 1 through 5.
Thank you. All those in favor? Carried. We haven't had in camera yet, so that's coming after this meeting, which then brings us to council reports. The first one is from me. Council, May 26th, I was at the BC Housing announcement about the shelter and accompanying modular housing on, I guess it was the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning. May 28th, I attended the Island Health Board lunch and information session, asked a few questions, didn't make it to the AGM afterwards. Was also at the regional services meeting with the ACRD in the city. We were looking at a discussion about how we would replace the Eco Aquatic Center. and as well at a retirement party for the SPCA manager, Irene Towell. May 29th, Regional Services meeting, the second part of that. Good news, Council, is that we've agreed to meet again. And then that evening attended the ADSS graduation ceremony. July 1st, we had our parade and Folk Fest. Great event on 3rd Avenue and then ending up at Harbor Key. It's a long day, a lot of preparations beforehand. Thank you to all those people that participated. There were initially, we had about 3 entrants, and towards the end I think we had 41. So it was good. Port Alberni came through, and it was a lot of fun. On July the 4th, we had the Jane Austen train and lunch, and thank you to Mr. Deacon and his department for helping pull that together. It was a great cooperation between the city and Maclean's Mill Society, and of course the Jane Austen Festival organization group. And then that evening we had a debriefing from the parade committee, and Council, I'll make sure that you get a copy of that report before the next council meeting. July the 6th, I attended a musical at ADSS as part of the Jane Austen Festival. And then July the 7th, more Jane Austen. It was actually the Count and the Tea, and briefly attended the Summer Rain event at Bob Daly Stadium. And that was an event put on by one of our local churches, and it was a great event. Lots of music, and not a lot of people when I got there, but there'd been lots of people there earlier on, and it still seemed to be going on in the evening. And I move receipt of my report.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. From the regional district, Councillor McClellan.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the last regional district meeting was held on the west coast in Ucluelet in the Toquat district, in Toquat tribal offices, or their nation offices, I'm not sure what name they call them. And while we were there, the business that was handled was an agreement was signed about firefighting between the Ucluelet Fire Department and the West Coast Airport, Long Beach Airport, I guess it's called. And for $10, the Long Beach Airport gets fire protection. So I guess I just hope that all works out for what they need for the Federal Department of Aviation. They've also are looking at getting a grant for an airshed study for the entire Alberni Valley, which would probably make some sense. And I got another note here I can't read, Mr. Mayor, so I will now make that my report.
Okay. Okay, and Councillor Paulson, thank you for attending on my behalf.
Just for many of you old timers and new timers, Henderson Lake is no longer called Henderson Lake. It's now called Hukutless Lake, and it's a new name that is adopted. So on new maps and stuff, you will not see it referred to as Henderson Lake. So that was kind of interesting.
Okay, thank you. And a motion to accept your report?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And councillors' reports. Let's start with Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Spent my Canada Day weekend rather selfishly. I was back in my hometown of High River, Alberta, with family celebrating there. Just want to congratulate the Golden Oldies Car Show for their successful venue yesterday. The Kiwanis thanks you for inviting us to be there and selling out double what we had, so that's great. Just to remind everybody, tomorrow, our town, year 33 begins. Wild Wild West at Blair Park from 6 till 8. We're going to have the usual, that's the Alberni Valley Kennel Club and 4-H, so there'll be boots and bridles there with their horses, and No Frills, Tyler's No Frills will supply a treat, so and of course all of the world-famous Parks and Rec games. So I'd like to see everybody there tomorrow. Blair Park, 6 till 8 p.m., and that's my report, sir.
Thank you. Hopefully it's good weather. Councillor Alberni.
It will be good weather. Modular housing announcement back a few weeks ago was fantastic. I just want to mention the parade, which thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the work that you've done and so many others have done for that organization. I know it's been hard for a few years now to make that happen. So that's pretty exciting. And I thought the ending events at the Harbor Quay especially were great. The businesses were all hopping and restaurants were full, and it was a lot of fun. I also went to the slow pitch tournament for the first time. My son is in softball, so he was keenly interested in what was going on there, and amazed at the skill that they have. So that was a lot of fun. And went to Trooper, of course. There was tons and tons of people from out of town for that event, so it's always really good for the city. This weekend just was at the Golf Classic with Councillor Minions, serving on the 4th hole. So that was fun, and there were lots of people there, as always. Got to see Mr. Schick, which was pretty cool. I never actually met him before. And then, just make sure that you come out to our town tomorrow. I know my kids are going to be out there. My daughter was complaining today that she's bored, so it's only like 2 weeks into the summer vacation.
Yeah, we just started.
So we'll have lots of fun there. And then on Saturday, there's the Young Professionals Sunset Cruise, so make sure you get tickets to that. It's always a lot of fun.
Thank you. And Councillor Minions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was a lot that in the last 2 weeks that the community really came together for, so I'm happy to see the Canada Day celebrations. I missed them last year. I was out of the country, so this was the first year seeing it on 3rd Avenue, and I really enjoyed it down there. So thanks to the people involved in organizing that. I attended the 100 Plus Women Who Care event last week, and they raised $19,900 in one evening for a local group. So fantastic to see that group doing so well. I volunteered at the 25th Annual Charity Golf Classic on behalf of the Bread of Life, meeting with Scott Fraser that a few of us on council attended. It was nice of Minister Fraser to take the time to meet with us, and I think we made progress on a few important issues for the community. I met with a group interested in putting traffic circles all the way up Argyle. They had a very interesting presentation. Their group is called Arts on Argyle, and they wanted to put First Nations art in the middle of traffic circles. So traffic circles are definitely a hot topic in the community right now. I'm not sure where appropriate places are or aren't for them, but it's nice to see groups coming together to start to create a vision for some of these important spaces. I had a reconciliation committee meeting where we worked a bit further on our event that we're hoping to put on at some point toward the end of the summer, the BC Housing Shelter announcement. And I really enjoyed the meeting that we had with the regional district directors talking about regional services. It's nice to see all of the directors in our council coming together to create a joint plan. And I think we're all going to find a lot more value in the plan when we're working together to create it. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Paulson.
On June 26th, attended the the announcement of the modular housing. Also attended the Alberni Clayoquot Continuing Care Society spirited AGM, I might add. June 27th, once again attended the ACRD meeting in Ucluelet. We had a tour of the village of Makoa on the way down, and it was very interesting. We got to see their water treatment plant and also their power source, and also some new housing that they've got on the reserve down there, which is, they're a pretty forward-looking group, which is kind of cool. June 28th and 29th, attended the ACRD Regional Recreation Services workshops, and really that discussion was really centered around aquatic services, but in more general terms, shared services between city and the regional district. Canada Day went in the parade, and I'm sad to say that that will be the last time that my daughter's little red sports car will be in the parade. Some 50-somethings, we're trying to be 20-somethings, and we had a small accident, and my wife and I wrote that car off, little Mercedes sports car. The last thing is junior prep camp is coming. The ice is going into the multiplex. There will be close to 900 participants this year from all over the world, from the US, Canada, Eastern Canada, Europe, the Orient. And if you get a chance, drop in and have a look at that operation. It's amazing to see the changeover in ice time and the equipment that's laying around and drying, and it's a really good thing for our community, and I think it's an economic driver as well. And that's my report.
Thank you. And Councillor Sobey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the 26th of June, I attended the shelter housing with yourself for the new project announcement. It was great to see all the stakeholders together, including the community. On the 27th, I attended the Reconciliation Committee with Councillor Minions and Alberni, so it was great. I wanted to learn a bit more, so I appreciate the opportunity and welcome. In the evening of the 27th, I attended another LNG presentation at the Barclay with more information. I had lots more questions, so it was a great opportunity to meet those people. On the 28th, the Sub-Regional Recreation Services with ACRD, a great discussion about, discussing about cost sharing and so forth. So I'm looking forward to see much more progress on that issue. Later in the afternoon, I attended the Island Health AGM, met with all the board members. I was able to address several social issues we're having in the community, dealing with our people with addiction issues, and also addressing issues pertaining to our seniors and the challenges they have in our community. So it was great, and I'll be doing follow-up with Island Health on that and report back to council. On the 29th, I attended the AVCSI meeting. Again, we discussed a lot about the new shelter, coming up with the new housing project and other issues, but nothing to announce so far. On the 30th, I did some volunteer work at the fantastic Slow Pitch, and it was just amazing how this town was booming with, I met with several tourists, and I just couldn't find them a place to stay, and finally I got a motel somewhere. So it's a great economic boost for the community, and thank you to all the merchants and everybody that made them very welcome. So on the 1st July, I attended the Canada Parade. For the first time this year, I didn't wear my red serge. I took the opportunity, and I was invited by IHS to be part of their float. So thank you to the Industrial Heritage Society for inviting me to attend. It was a great opportunity and to meet the whole community, so I appreciate it. On the 3rd of July, a meeting with the MLA Scott Fraser, along with Councillor McLennan, Councillor Minions, and Mayor Rattan. So a lot of good issues were addressed, and I truly appreciate the time that he gave, because many of us had several different issues, but we all address what we can. So thank you to our MLA for doing this. On the 8th of July, which was yesterday, great turnout for the Golden Oldies at the 44th Annual Show and Shine at Williamson Park. I must admit, I liked that venue. It was a lot for the children to participate, and it turned out awesome. There was one other special event I attended last week with MP Gordjon, addressing a lot of issues dealing with our veterans in the community. And myself being a veteran, I was very interested to hear more about what challenges our local veterans are dealing. And our MP is actually doing awesome work in listening and documenting and reporting back to the federal government. So thank you very much for MP Gordjon for taking the opportunity to speak with the veterans. For me, I was amazed how many we had. And so I made a lot of good friends there. So we're going to do some good work and networking together. So, and coming up, I just want to make sure that our town, of course, on Tuesday at 6 till 8, but also about their uptown merchants are having their block party. So please take the time and support local businesses and come up and enjoy what they have to offer in the uptown, and everybody's invited. And that is my report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor McClellan?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just briefly, I also attended the Fir Park Echo AGM, and like Councillor Bull said, it was kind of lively. Seems to be some communication possible problems there, so I hope they can straighten them out. I attended the sub-regional meeting on the multiplex, not the multiplex, but the aquatic center, if we're going to have one, and see how that will work. And met with the MLA, with the other councillors that have mentioned it, and appreciated the meeting and some of the answers we got. And his assistants were very quick at coming back with some numbers and going out and getting them while we were still there in many cases. The one that they're going to be looking at is where's the money and what's happening with Highway number 4 between here and the junction. We got told no in several languages, so we can't have the road to Horn Lake, although I'd like to see that revisited with the new government sometime. But we were promised some improvements for safety on Highway 4, so they're looking at that. And the rest of the time, during some of the other time, I spent looking for people who will run for council next time. And that's my report. And I would like to move the acceptance of all these wonderful reports from these councillors.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Council, that brings us to new business, and we have one item. Councillor McClellan, I believe.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This is a letter from, I guess, initially the Port Renfrew or Bamfield Chamber of Commerce, and for some reason it was sent to all the Chamber of Commerce and our mayor. And because, I guess partly because I'm on the Fisheries Committee for the ACRD, and Mayor forwarded it to me, and after reading it, I really believe it is an emergency that we should at least support. So I'm just going to read one short paragraph out of it to give an idea what is happening. And what's happened is the Department of Fisheries and Oceans closed fishing for all finfish from Otter Point and Souk to the entrance of Port Renfrew. This essentially shut down all halibut fishing and 90% of the best salmon fishing area. Recreational fishers are now jammed into a small area, have a lower success rate for salmon and a non-existent rate for halibut. This closure has devastated suit guides, tackle shops, services catering to fishers. DFO is now seeking feedback on a new closure idea, which will basically close the west coast of Vancouver Island Outer Banks. It will result in a similar devastation in our area, although they don't read that here. If DFO follows their pattern, they will accept comments for the next 2 weeks and shut down this huge area of the west coast and Haida Gwaii, possibly in a few weeks or next year at the latest. This is such an important issue to the coast, extensive consultation must take place over the next year. A couple of weeks consultation during the summer is unacceptable. And what they're referring to is on the 11th, which is Wednesday coming up, is the last input we can have, and it started a week and a half ago. So this is a big thing, and I apologize. I hate getting things in the last minute, but after I read it, I thought we've got to at least try. So I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Mayor, that we send a letter to support these communities and demanding the federal government give us more time to consult, not just 2 weeks in the summer holidays.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Minions?
Thank you. Can I just ask, are we asking them specifically for more time to consult, or are we supporting the initiative one way or the other?
If my motion was what I really want, deep down inside, I'd be telling them that no, we don't want it. I oppose the motion. But when you've heard it for the first time right now, I wouldn't want to vote on that. And the only reason I would vote that way is because I've been involved in this discussion for quite some time. But definitely the communities, Port Alberni in particular, should be consulted, and they don't really want to do that.
Thank you. I think it's great for us to ask them to slow down, but I don't think we have enough information to form an opinion on it yet.
And certainly all other communities on the West Coast, Tofino, Ucluelet. Well, Tofino is speaking about it this week, Ucluelet tomorrow night. Other communities on the West Coast are concerned about it. There's a rally tomorrow afternoon in Port Renfrew that's organized through the BC Chambers of Commerce, or the Vancouver Island, I guess, Chambers of Commerce. Councillor Sauvé?
Yes, I've done my research on this. It's a simple fact that the communities feel that none of them got the opportunity to speak or participate in any talks with the DFO, and not only they want to take time to understand the study, but time to participate and actually have DFO working with stakeholders in making this decision, including the First Nation and so forth. So I support what the other communities are doing. Not only it would affect what type of fishing we're going to deal with, but also to the fact that it's going to be a major impact, especially for the West Coast communities and so forth, including our community. So I really encourage and I support this motion.
Councillor Alberni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to point out, I completely support the motion for more consultation, and like Councillor McClement, from what I've seen, you know, it's pretty thin as far as the justification. But for the information of the public, the reason this is coming forward is to increase protection for endangered southern and northern resident orca. So just for people's information. But again, because that information is only coming out now, the public certainly doesn't know about it. We've only just found out about it. So absolutely, we should be consulted more broadly than what we're being given the opportunity to.
Okay, Councillor Alberni? I'm sorry, Councillor McClement?
Yeah, you'll get there. Yeah, and I believe that Councillor Alberni is correct. It's got something to do with the orcas, which is a real problem because they're decimating the salmon stocks. It's their natural food. And I don't really think there's a natural enemy anymore for the orca because the fishermen are no longer allowed to kill them. So that's, it's something that is very pretty to watch for tourists and so on, and it's coming up. So it's something we're going to have to probably debate for a while yet.
Okay, City Clerk, do you have the motion? Could you just read it back to us, please?
Mr. Mayor, the motion would be that Council provide a letter of support for the concerns of communities impacted by the closures, and also to urge federal government consultation with local governments.
Okay. On the motion then, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. This brings us into question periods, an opportunity for public and press to ask questions of Mayor and Council. Anybody wish to address Council? Yes, sir.
I tried desperately to listen to the subject earlier, but somebody was speaking about land for development in the harbor area, and is that the piece of land on the hill down behind Swale Rock Cafe?
Oh yes, yeah, and the parking lot in behind what we call the Carmore block.
Yes. So are those trees on that hill protected?
That's part of the discussion of whether or not we wish to do that. We haven't put the RFP out yet.
Okay, so I'm hesitant to say this, but I'm going to have to at this point.
Okay.
Part of my view isn't so nice at street level, but I have a really beautiful view of that hillside. And on that hillside is a tree with a 2-year-old bald eagle nest, a mating pair. And she has worked on that nest and completed that nest this year. And they are in that tree on a daily basis. And I witnessed the mating behavior and the act itself. And I just want the city to be aware of what's going on that hillside. I didn't want the public to be aware because of drone activity and whatnot.
Okay.
But there you are. So as soon as you mention that land, that's the only concern I have, because I can see that clear as a bell from my house, and it's quite a beautiful site. It's 50 feet from the ground.
I share your concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to address Council? Okay, then Council, our next item is to go in camera, so I'd entertain a motion to close the meeting to the public.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. We'll reconvene in about 10 minutes, Council. That's from Jane Morden. That's It's actually encouraging stuff.
It is, yeah, very.
It's taken them a long time to get to this.